excited about being a mom. I was excited about being married. I was excited. It exploded. And I think it exploded within him, right? By the time my daughter was born, we were kind of having problems, right? And I was taking it in. I was thinking it was me. So I was very sad, right? And very cautious of people, cautious of their stories, cautious, because I was becoming, like I said, feeling like, now I can't even think of the word that I was just saying. I was feeling like I didn't know,
yeah,
like I wasn't unsure, like everybody knows but me, that kind of thing. So when she came in, she was very reserved. She stood back and she watched people. She didn't talk a lot. My older son would do the talking for her, because they were, like me and my younger brother, very connected, that kind of thing. And then with my younger son, which was, the relationship was on the outs, I was feeling it was all my fault, even though my ex was saying, it's not you, it's me. No, it's me. And I would cry all the time. So when my younger son came in, he cried all the time, right? So it was kind of like, okay, how do I correct this? Because this came from me. How do I correct it? And I wasn't even in my spiritual awakening yet, but I knew that this was a product of me.
mm-hmm.
Right? So I just wanted to confirm that before I went on to the next question.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you. Exactly what you said. Yeah, I experienced those same thing with my children. I don't want to say there's good or bad qualities, but there's qualities that stand out in each one of them that I'm now having the opportunity to see within myself as pure light and gifts.
Yes.
That I never did, I think, before, like as they were growing up, because I was just trying to figure it out. I was just like, okay, I'm a mom, I'm just trying to figure things out.
Right.
But now that they're getting older and I can see their personalities coming through and shining through in things that I would have never done as a kid,
mm-hmm.
and they're getting the opportunity to express those things in their own unique way, I'm now able to look and say, oh, okay, Rashida, like during those times, like they come out with, like my son comes out with this grounding piece, and this curiosity for life, which was very much me when I was pregnant with him. I just thought, gosh, like you're growing a whole human being inside of you. That to me was incredible. And he gave me the opportunity to just see life through a human being's eyes for the first time. Like just the littlest of things I started to just fall back in love with. That was like the first little click for me to say, like, Rashida, there's so much more out there in this world that you have not even discovered yet. And we need you to do that, because we need you to teach that to your son. We need you to teach that to your children. We need you to understand and teach that for yourself. So he brought that in. And then like my second child, she comes in with this confidence. And during that time, I was confident. I was like, okay, I think I got this mom thing down. Okay, number 2, it's all right. And she still brings that to this day. And I love that about her, because I'm like, okay, I want that. I never had that as a kid, but like I can see that it's always been there, that go-getter mentality, and like just not striving for perfection, but just striving for that, like, I got this, I can do this type of thing. And I take those little pieces. She also has the same gifts as me as well. So I'm trying to give her space to understand that and learn that, which is something I didn't get the opportunity to do as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the fact that we can have those type of conversations. Yeah, she senses spirit. Yeah, she'll sense energy. Like,
Ooh,
yeah, I want her to ask those type of questions. I'm not asking her to fall into the same line as me, but to be aware that you have the gifts and, like,
right.
harness.
And you have 3 children?
Yourself. 4.
Oh, you have 4?
Yeah. And so then my third, I did a lot of meditation. I meditated a lot with her during that time. She came out, no joke, she came out with a little red dot sort of in the middle of her forehead pictures. And I would always say like, oh, what the? And I would honestly, every one of them had a nickname. Hers was Mama G. Don't know why, but it was Mama G is what I would call her. And she came in with this light, and she's very wise, just very wise. She just is able to sense energy. And I don't know how she does it, but she just holds space in this like, this wise old elder way that I love and appreciate about her. And I love the fact that she's so outspoken. She's taught me to be outspoken. Even though I've taught her things, she comes back and reteaches me the same things that I taught her. And then I'm like, oh, right, I did say that to you. But she has taken it and then utilized it for herself. So I appreciate those little pieces. And then there's Luna, who what I love about this time for me, because I like that you even mentioned that you were going through a moment of like unsureness, but also like sadness. And so like your son or your child was crying a lot and things like
naive.
that.
Yeah, the whole naive. There's that word again.
Yeah.
Being naive, being unsure, being it's me.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, and then on top of that, other people saying, I could have told you, you know, I saw it. I don't know how you didn't see it. And my thing was, well, why didn't you tell me? Well, you wouldn't have believed me, you know, that kind of, and probably I wouldn't have, because I was trying to hold the family together. Yeah,
that's a big piece too, right? Yeah, I've learned a lot from each one of them. Yeah, they've helped me in so many ways to take whatever that I see in them, like the beauty that I see in them, and say like, Rashida, like, wake up, like that same beauty that you see in them is in you too, and you need to recognize that, and you need to like embrace that, and you need to find ways that you can utilize that for yourself. Yeah, I really do take those things into consideration as I continue on my work and live my life.
Okay, so next question. I know we're at an hour and a half, and I don't want to hold you up. But the next question, I will try to make this the last question. Let's talk about your channeling and your being an empath. When did that occur for you? You said as a child. So were you doing that as a child and you just didn't get any help with that? When did it start to like embody you? And I say it embodying you because sometimes it just really embodies you. And you know, you have no other recourse to just kind of explode it.
Yeah,
that's the only thing.
I'm glad that I did. I like that you said that. I'm glad that I was able to allow it to explode within me. I'm learning to step like all the way in now. I used to have like, honestly, I had this conversation with a friend where I was like, I had one foot in this world and one foot in the spirit world. And it's not to say that you can't have in both, but like I had a moment where spirit's like, why can't you just step all into the spirit world? It's all one anyway. So I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna step all the way into that, because if I step all the way into that, that's gonna say like this. I don't want to say like this is who I am, because I never want to like form to any identity, but like this is within me. Let that explode. I want to see where that goes and what that looks like. But honestly, as a kid, I don't know what I can say. Like, I don't know what was happening in my house. But what I do know is that as a kid, I would get my feet tickled every night. It really spooked me as a kid. Almost every night. And I would wake up and nobody would be there. And I'd be like, what the? But I was also living in a household where I was too afraid to speak up. So I actually never told anybody about it until like decades later, where I was having a conversation with my sister about how I don't like my feet. I like my feet covered when I sleep. And I explained to her why. And then she was like, what? that used to happen to me too. And I was like, what? And I'm like, wow, it's amazing that like we just never told anybody, because at that time I was like, well, what, first of all, what's the point? And like, honestly, my throat chakra was like totally cut off. Like I wasn't going to speak at all. That as I started to come back into who I was and like reconnecting with myself, is now I can look back at all of those and say like, oh, this was always there. Those gifts were always there. I was always able to feel out the energy in a room and then help to either settle the energy or find ways through, I would just say find ways through my energy and the calmness, and then find ways to have conversations that would allow others to be able to feel seen. So like my dad was very abusive, not to me, but to the rest of the family, to the rest of the women in the family. And I didn't experience as much as they did. What I did know was that like if I could temper the waters for him by just asking him questions about himself and like, you know, making the spotlight be on him so that we could build this like relationship of some sort, is what I felt kept me safe. So like I'm not gonna speak up against him, I'm not gonna battle, but what I'm gonna do is find a way to like be equal in some way. And that helped for me personally. Like that kind of helped me, I would say, like get through my life without getting the abuse that they received. And then it didn't like I kind of went away. Like all of those things sort of went away as he left. So by the time I was about 16, and something happened, like an altercation happened. I called the police, and like that was it. That was the moment where it was like he's out of the house. So then I kind of had the opportunity to be a kid. And so I was like, I'm going to be a kid. So from like 16 onward, I got the opportunity to be a little bit free. Although like by the time I was about 17, between like 16, 17, I started to go to church. I was very heavily involved in the church because I just wanted to find a space that like I felt like I belong, a community. So I felt like that really helped me to connect even deeper just to spirituality. Like my mom never said you guys have to go to church or anything. It was like just whatever makes you guys happy, you follow that and do that. So that was my choice of doing that until I was about 18. And then I thought, oh, this is kind of stifling. Like I'm about to go through this other transformation and I'm feeling stifled in how I can think and how I can move and like what I was visually seeing. Like I would be like, I see angels, and they're like, no, you don't. Like you can't do that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I see them. But I can now say that, like, yeah, what I did see in those moments was real. I could sense it. I could see it. And then, like, having my kids, I think that really catapulted me to dive deeper into spirituality and, like, what that looked like. And then, like, just little, I would say there was, like, core memories that started to, like, click and continue my journey into where I am today. So from honestly reading the book The Secret, even though I know people are like, oh, it's secret, because it talks more about materialistic, but for me, I needed to hear those words because I had never heard those words ever in my life. That I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that there's more than just this form. There's something more than that. I need to dive deeper. And honestly, through that, it was like synchronicities of connecting with people who I just met on the street to say, have you heard this person? Have you heard this? And I would dive deeper into books and start reading. I got into like Eckhart Tolle and understanding a little bit deeper about like just the way just the world and the spirit world and like myself. And then I ended up meeting, everything happens by divine, right, timing. I met some wonderful women who I'm still friends with, who a lot of them were doing Reiki. I had never heard of that. And yet at the same time, I had utilized Reiki prior to even knowing what it was on my son one time. Yeah, I was using energy work. I found like this random video on YouTube, and it was all about like energy and touching and like how you could like move energy. And like my son was like 3 at the time, super constipated. I'm thinking like, I'm pregnant, I gotta take him to the hospital, like what am I gonna do? And something was like, do this, just try it. Oh, okay, I'm gonna give this a try. And then the next day, this guy was like smooth sailing on the toilet, and I was like, did I do that? And in my head, I was like, you know what, you did that. And then like fast forward like years later, meeting some friends who were like, yeah, we did this workshop called, you know, it was Reiki. And I'm like, what is that? I'm like, I gotta try this out. And my friend was like, what? I swear, Rashida, you've done Reiki before. I swear we've had this conversation. I'm like, no, we've never had this conversation before. She's like, that's so weird. So I ended up taking the workshops. I went through Reiki level 1, and that sort of like did a click for me. And then I was like, wow, everything just with Reiki, it helps to elevate your energy because we're all on different energy planes. So I kind of feel like it just does something with your energy and gives you a little extra fast track to give you that little bump.
It kind of like that little switch that you flick, and then all of a sudden you go, right? You know,
that happened for me, and I was like, what? This is amazing. And all these amazing things started to happen after that, that I was like, oh, okay, I'm more intrigued in. I'm also the type of person where I love to just know, I got to dive deep. I got to keep diving deep. I want to keep knowing. So I was like, okay, well, if I did level 1, I want to jump into level 2. What is that going to bring? And then that brought so much extra leather, you know, elevation. And then I waited, actually. I was so excited that I was like, I need to go and do the next one right away. And something halted me and was like, chill, Rashida, like, let's absorb this one and see where this goes. And it was like perfect timing because the teacher was like, I think you should probably wait. Like, let's just chill. And I was like, all right, you're right. I totally should. I think I waited about a year, and I went back and did the Reiki, the last one, Reiki level 3, which then put me as a Reiki master. And then through that, it really elevated the gifts that were like sitting dormant. I didn't realize that like the Reiki, just doing the energy work, was also triggering like this intuitiveness within me that was always there, that I can then like tap into the way people are feeling and like spirits around me. And so I started to utilize that and put the two together. So even though it was just Reiki, it was like teaching me the intuitive side of it. And I actually really enjoyed a lot of that.
Right.
What I think then go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Finish.
Yeah, so through that, it was honestly the pandemic that sort of threw things back a little bit because I couldn't do in person anymore. And then I realized, well, if I can't do in person, how can I like just help people without doing all of that extra, you know, being physical kind of thing. And then that sort of led me into doing the psychic piece of it, which then I realized, ooh, I really love this. Like I was already doing it. And minus doing like the Reiki piece, I realized that if I really honed in on that gift, that I could really like really expand it. And so I started to expand even more by joining like mediumship workshops and realizing like, oh, Rashida, you can really tap in if you really let go. And I was like, okay, let me tap in even more. And then
okay, Casey, thank you for stopping by. Hello, Daddy's girl. That's my niece, Daddy's girl. So I just want to say hello. So keep going, because I have a feeling this is leading to your podcast, right?
It is actually. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad that you're saying that part. So by doing the mediumship, and I want to say this, I would recommend, because I know a lot of people out there, some more often than not, have never gone to a psychic or have never gone to a medium. I think it helps. Like I was actually going to psychics even before I even got into any of this work, even before I had kids. And that woman was such a nice woman. She would just do it because she just had the gifts. And it was a $50 donation, and she would always donate it to the church. But she's just like, I just love doing this, and I just want to help people. And that always stood out to me. And she was like, anytime you want to just chit chat, like we can chit chat. And I realized that those moments helped me to validate the things that I was feeling and the things that I would see for myself.
Right.
Because I know a lot of people who do this work actually can't see for themselves, whether they're a seer, but they can do it better for others and not for themselves.
Right.
I'm really blessed to be able to do both ways.
Right.
So I would honestly go to a psychic to just make sure that everything that I was seeing made sense. So I decided then, like, okay, like, I would go to a psychic just to be like, okay, I already know everything. I just want to know this person who doesn't know me. It's like me having a conversation with the spirit world. Like, I want to pick up the phone and say, listen, guys, y'all been saying this to me. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here, and would always be accurate. And at the end, the majority of the time, all of them would say to me, Rashida, like, why are you even here? I'm like, and they're like, you need to tap into your power, Rashida. You need to tap into this because you are really good at this work. And at that time, every time I would go, I was really like, I don't know. I was still shy. I was still working on my throat chakra. Like, I don't know if I can do this. They're like, no, you're really good at doing this. And then I tapped into the medium side of it, and that really like opened up so much, because I never had a relationship. I didn't know my grandparents, like never met them. So the feelings that I had and the conversations that I had with them, all of those things, the feelings that I would have of how they felt in their time of being here on earth, was able to be validated through people who had never met me. So I was always thinking, oh, guys, I would always have conversations like, I hope I'm going in the right direction, guys. Like, I know this is different. And every time they would say, we need you to continue this. We need you to do this over and over. And it wasn't until a lovely woman who I had never met, was like perfect. She was a woman of color. And it was probably like one of the best readings I had out of the workshop. Had connected with somebody who I didn't even know. And it was my Aunt Ruby, who I didn't even know I had an aunt. I didn't know what her name was, but she was able to come through and say her name. And she actually had done this work. So that was something that sat with me for a long time, was that I was the only person within my family who was choosing to go down this path. Like, some of my family members have the same gifts, but it wasn't like, we just weren't using it, or we weren't doing those type of things, right?
Yeah.
But I was the one that was like, I'm going to stand in this. This is my gifts. I want to continue with this. I want to help people, because like, all I can give is of myself. I don't have all the extra stuff to be able to give like the rest of my family, but I can give of me, and that to me should be enough. And that helped to solidify the work that I continue to do, because she lived in Nova Scotia, and she would do the work out of her house, and people would come to her back door, and she would help them with plant medicine. She would help them with all those work. So I didn't know about that, but I was able to go back to my mom and validate that. I needed to say, like, did we have an Aunt Ruby? She's like, oh, yeah. And she was able to say, like, yeah, she kind of did the same stuff. She couldn't really pinpoint what it is, but what she was able to do was say, like, yeah, she kind of did some weird stuff. Didn't know what it was. Yeah. So it was like, it was weird, but we never spoke about it. But it helped, because in that time I was transforming, and I felt like I needed to separate myself a little bit more from my family in order to figure out who Rashida was, who I was, and how I was raising my family. And there was a big guilt for me in that time, because I was like, I feel like I still need to be over here, but something is pulling me over here.
Yeah.
And that message came through perfectly, because she basically validated that and said, like, we know that you need time away, and that's okay, and they'll understand. And she also, Aunt Ruby, also did the same thing. She wouldn't come around often, but she would come around for, like, holidays and little things like that. But she would really like separate herself. And at that time they were like, it's okay. Like, you can do that. We need you to do this right now in order to continue that. And through that, I was able to connect with a mentor who was wonderful and sort of guided me in that direction of like, you can do this. Like, you can have a podcast, because they had a podcast, which they still have. And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, no, you can do this. You have a lot to say, your voice, everything. And I was like, all right, let me just give this a shot. And boom, there you have like the podcast. And at the time they were like, take your time with like figuring out what the name was. And it didn't take me long because I really felt like, what? The ultimate human experience. This is what I'm having on Earth. I'm having a human experience.
Yeah.
And like, how amazing is that? Can that not be ultimate? Is that the right, title? And they were like, that's the title. And I thought to myself, it came too fast. And they're like, it was
Yeah.
perfect. That's what it's supposed to be. And through that, I've had the Ultimate Human Experience podcast, which you can find on Apple and Spotify. And
Yeah.
even through that, like, it is ballooned even more. I'm able to connect with like another amazing individual who has her platform that she's creating called the Hero Collective. So I know if people are not following me, but they are, I've journeyed through this for the last 2 years by myself. But I'm learning that.
Would you say that a little slower? What it's called? This other collaboration
Yes.
that you're having with?
So I've collaborated and partnered with the Hero Collective, which is a platform that has been created to allow for other practitioners to be able to do their work, and people can go on. It's not open yet, so it's a couple of weeks left before it launches, but an opportunity for anybody out there who is new to this journey to be able to find practitioners that can help them to reconnect with themselves and find, to me, it's all about recovering the light from within.
Okay.
Because the light's there. It's just through our experiences, it's been dimmed. It's been dimmed by us. It's been dimmed by other people. And my goal is to always just allow that to be recovered within yourselves. Because deep down, we all have this gift and we all know we have a vision. We see it for ourselves. We know what the journey looks like, but we question it along the way. And it's not my job as a psychic, and I don't think it is for any psychic out there, to say your life is going to be like this and this and this and this, because at any point that can pivot and change with our choices and our decisions.
Right.
My job is to allow you to feel confident and be present enough in those choices and decisions that you're making along the way.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a clear, like an overview of what it can look like. And then you can then pick and choose how that is going to really like get down to the, the definition of what that looks like for you.
Right. Just like for me, it's, and I finally, the divine finally kind of fine-tuned it for me. Sandy, you're not supposed to be planting the seeds for anybody. You're supposed to put them in the seed in their hand and say, this is for you. Now it's your job. You're responsible. You're responsible. This is here's the seed. You're responsible for planting it. Because I would feel like I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't feel that I finished the job. I felt like I failed at it because people would be kicking it up out the dirt. And the divine just kind of said to me, hey, Sandy, you can't tell them, here, this is for you, plan it, do it, blah, 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 because they have free will. They can turn around and say, ooh, I don't want it today, right? So I finally realized, oh, okay, so should I put it in their hand? And the divine said, yes, give it to them. They decide what they want to do with it. If they chuck it over their shoulder and they're back in your alive and they're asking the same question over again, just give them the seed again. And if they keep doing this, after a while, they'll get tired of doing that with you. They'll go somewhere else, or they'll just get tired of doing it themselves. But it's okay for you to be open. It's okay for you to say, if somebody's being outright nasty to you, at the same time that they're asking from you, that you're giving to them, that you're handing them the seed, and they're just being point blank nasty to you, or then you get to say, okay, here's my boundary, is if you don't want the seed, don't plant it. Take what resonates for you, leave what doesn't. That's why I started saying this. That's for the last year and a half of last year. I started saying, take what resonates. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave it in the room. Don't even bother about judging it. I unconditionally, with love, invite you to leave my room because it's not satisfying you. It's not making you whole. It's not whatever it is that you want. I don't have it. And that's okay. Right?
I like that.
It finally resonated with me. If I don't have it for you, that's okay. And I'm still okay. I'm still on the right path.
Yeah.
I'm still whole and I'm still present. So it kind of it took some fine tuning and retuning to find out that my part in this is not to make you perfect. I'm not here to make you perfect. You're here to find your perfectness that's already in you. You came into this existence with a perfect spirit being. That doesn't your spirit being doesn't stop being perfect just because your foreign body isn't perfect, or just because your foreign body made a mistake, or just because your foreign body didn't acclimate to situations or circumstances that weren't for your highest and greatest good, or just because you kind of slid down the polarity of lower energies. Your formless body is still perfect and it's still in you. Now you got to go find it. Just like you said, you're going to show people how to lift their veils from, so that, because the light is there. That energy is there. Their gifts are there. Their calling is there. Their purpose is there. It's just been veiled by so much information that's come in and just kind of weighing it down. So when they come to you for your gifts, for your channeling, for you being an empath, for you guiding them, for you having workshops and stuff that they can go to, you're just the vehicle that they're going to step into and say, okay, I have to go here and I have to go here, and okay, now I have to stop. But it's all because the what do you call that? The online system in your car is saying, okay, you put the address in. This is you putting the address in and saying, well, you could do this, this, and this. You could go here, here, and here. These are all your choices. Right?
Yeah, I like that you said it like that. Yeah, the option of feeling confident in your choices and decisions. That's, at the end of the day, that's really what it is.
Yes.
And like what you said, like, yeah, you're right. People do place a lot of emphasis on those who do have this gift to get that answer. They're waiting for that one answer that's going to change everything. And like, unfortunately, that's just not how it works.
No, no. It's kind of like,
you wish it does, but it doesn't. Like, I used to think that too. I used to think, oh, it's just this one particular thing. And they're like, no, it's actually not that. It's just you needing to honestly, like, discover within yourself, what are the choices that you want to make? What's going to make you feel good? At the end of the day, it is all about what feels good to you.
Yeah.
And, whether you're a mom or you're not a mom, but if you can just look from that lens of like, every human being, every baby that's born into this world is coming in what I believe is very pure and innocent. And I always want to have the opportunity. That reminds me every time I want to touch back into that. Mm-hmm. I know that, like people say, when we're born, we have all this karmic stuff that's attached to you. But when you look at an infant, like a newborn baby, you don't see any of that stuff. Mm-mm. What do you see? You see pure light. You see this beautiful being that came from, I would say, nothing, right? To something into this earth. What is that? I want to touch on that piece right there. And I'm hoping that when I do the work that I do and I help those, that's where I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get to that moment of coming into this earth. Yeah. Remember that, because as we get older, we're going to experience people in our lives who are not going to resonate with us. They're gonna cause triggers. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
be assholes. They're gonna whatever they're gonna be. But there was something before that, and I want to remember that piece. And I'm hoping that, like, with the work that I do, I can help others to see that within themselves, but also to be able to see that within others. So just like to go off of what you were saying, that like in your relationship, you were always like, what am I doing? It's a me thing. It takes two.
Yeah.
It takes two in a relationship. And like, what can I touch on for myself that I can work on and evolve? And if I can do that within myself, then hopefully in my relationships, they get to see those pieces of me, even be aware of it and say, okay, I want to change that within,
Yeah.
whoever that person is or however that is.
However,
I think
yeah.
that's how that cycle continues to happen.
Yeah. Because then they can go, okay, well, not, okay, well, Sandra's fixed herself. Now I can go back and check that out. I want somebody to see, wow, she went through a metamorphosis, right? And then go, if she can, put herself out there to show us how she did, because it was like literally, I was like mortified. You could see it in my face. You could feel it. I could feel it in my body. I think the 2 lives that I was on with Soul Family, where they saw the broken soul awakening with Sandra, and the part where I said, okay, how do I, kind of going, how do I fix this? And it wasn't like, listening, having the Soul Family go, okay, we're listening to you, you know, and going from point A to point B, and going, well, okay, I hear this, I see this, I feel this. Okay, how do we do this? That whole kind of thing. And then understanding that with every opening that you have, no matter who we can say other people triggered us, but they couldn't trigger something inside us that wasn't there already.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, it gets deep because the deepness of it, or the strength of the trigger, is how deep the situation, circumstance, or feeling or emotion is that's inside of you. And sometimes the trigger has to be so heavy, so intense, because whatever's down underneath all those layers has to get struck, right? And then you can start to heal because it comes up. And in our healing, what I'm finding out is it opens you up to allow yourself to be open to the person that triggered you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not like, I want that person out of my life, whatever. It's like, I've got to build up a boundary. But it leaves you open to go, well, what was going on with them, and what was triggering them, right? That ricochet, that trigger to me. I want to be there so I can be open for them.
Mm-hmm.
If that's my calling.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I would have to go inward to the divine to say, am I supposed to be there, for this? Because that person may not come back around again. That person might have been just there for that higher being to do whatever they did, and they're on their way to another story. But if that happens and that person comes around, instead of looking at them as the person who triggered you, and now you want to get back at them, or it's kind of like, do I want to have a moment where I don't react? I have a moment where I discern, and I have right action.
Mm-hmm.
Right action is going to say, who do I want to be in this next moment?
Mm-hmm.
And it happens a lot with family, and it happens a lot with people who come from families of abuse,
Yeah.
because they're so triggered. They don't think that they'll ever be able to heal from abuse. They don't think that they'll ever be able to look at somebody and go, I feel bad for them. You know, and that be okay. I feel really bad because, wow, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was talking to her brother about their dad and how their dad was. And then she had said to her brother, have you ever thought about how our dad lived his life? Because you can say grandpa was X, Y, and Z on the scale of just being a class 1 a-hole, right? Well, imagine how dad, our father, had to live under that rule. And her brother said, I never thought of it that way, right? It takes a lot to get there, to open up for people with trauma to get there, you know. And the same thing with men. The going, and I only bring this up because it's part of trauma, that there are a lot of men that live under an old dogma that says little boys don't cry. Men don't show they don't show being annoyed. They don't show being
they're not allowed to show emotions.
They're not allowed to, no emotion, nothing that reveals love, because their heart chakra is closed, right? So they don't get to dad doesn't hold your hand, these old things. Boy. Now you see men doing it now, but there are men that have been raised in that story. Why? It's not a story that has been said to them. It's in their DNA now, right? So it's hard for them to, they get abused in that. And then we have a society that says only women are abused and victims, but men don't identify with saying, in my household, I'm being abused. Why? Because a man can't get abused by a woman. Why? Because, oh man, you're 180 pounds and she's 120 and she's kicking your ass. No, I don't think you would say that out loud, right? But it's all of these are all abuses that need to be addressed with the story, with the vibrational story that's going on. Right?
I'm so glad that you mentioned this. I'm so glad they mentioned it. I literally just had a podcast. I just did an episode earlier today, recorded it. We'll be on next week, but we talked all about this. It's about ways of supporting women in their transformation, right? But also like understanding as well that other element of the masculine energy and what they represent. I truly do believe that you can't have one without the other. Right. It lives within you. And to just touch on a little bit about what you just said, I'm really glad that you said that, because I really would encourage others. I know it's a tough thing for people if you've experienced trauma by the hands of others, or doesn't matter what kind of abuse it was, to look at it from a bigger lens, because it took a while for me to do that. But when I had the opportunity to look at it from that lens, it made me understand that, like, I guess it's that piece of like forgiveness, like just forgiveness of the fact that like that person, I'll use my dad for the example. My dad, I don't know anything much about him. In the Caribbean, like, culture, they don't really talk about themselves and whatever they experienced prior to. You're only getting bits and pieces. They're not going to share everything. Right. But nobody out there is born violent. So where did it come from? And I had to start to sit there and say, well, where did that come from? Where are these experiences? Like, okay, there's no way a human being, as a kid, I was like, there's no way another human being can treat another human being like this. It's ridiculous. We see it every day on an everyday basis, and it still boggles my mind from
Right.
an inner child place of like, can't we all just get along? Is there a space where we can just love each other and have moments where we can disagree but be okay with that disagreement? Like, I'm learning that in my relationship now, that it's okay to disagree, but to give your perspectives and to say, okay, like, I'm gonna hold space in this moment between the two of us. I felt like this from this perspective. It's not a you thing, it's how I'm feeling. Why is those things coming up? Those things weren't, like you said, it wasn't talked about. We weren't allowed to have those type of conversations back then. Whether it was the 50s, 60s, 70s, like even 80s, because like, who's raising you? It's those from the 50s, 60s, and 70s are raising you. So you're just tagging on to whatever is there. But there's
Yeah.
something within you that's like, no, this doesn't really make sense. Let me try something different.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I would encourage those two. Like, it's tough to do, but to dive deep into where those, why it happened. You can't really say like why, but like, where did it stem from?
Yeah.
I had to do that work on my own because like the separation, my father went to the UK after the whole thing was done and lived out the rest of his life there until he passed. But I never got to, he never saw my children. He didn't know anything about me. So I had to sit there with myself and like either find a way to close that chapter between me and him without him actually being there. And I was able to do that. And then going back to like the mediumship, he was able to come through, and everything that that person said validated all of the things that I had thought about his upbringing and his life. And it wasn't perfect. So
Yeah.
all of that trauma of not being able to share those things gets pumped up. And like somebody just said today, like, you can have that bucket and have all the shit in the bucket and then put all the affirmations and all these wonderful beautiful things on top, materialistic stuff. There's still shit at that bucket that needs to come to the surface, and you can, that stuff needs to come. And if it doesn't, it might show up in ways that are harmful to others.
Yeah.
And to have to sit with that throughout your whole life is a tough piece. So I have this ability to come in from that angle and say like, yeah, he was a very mean man, but I couldn't imagine how his upbringing was. He didn't grow up with a dad. Like, his dad abandoned him. I have kids. Like, that feeling of being abandoned is a tough feeling of thinking I'm not loved, and now I'm trying to figure out what love is, and I don't know what that is. I'm trying to make it up for myself. So you're trying to look for it in other things and other people, and you place all these expectations on others, and if they don't come to that expectation, then you're going to either be harmful to them in some way, or you're whatever it might be. That like, those things really need to be spoken about. And like, I mean, I have a son who's about to turn 18, and even though I show him love and I show him all those things, like, guess what? He still has moments where he comes to me and says like, I'm not supposed to feel stress. Stress is weakness. Like, and I'm like, who told you this?
Like,
right.
Where'd you get that from? Right.
Like, that's not how it is in this house. But like, I don't realize, like, we got social media, we got the society, what is one born in at that time, school, that I was like, no, it's okay. And we all feel stress.
And you gotta, I think, to notice that particular story, that men wrote the story. They took love out of the whole kind of thing. I had a friend who said, well, men, a man of mankind wrote that story. They get what they get. But it's a dogma of a story that has been handed down generation to generation, and then it's fed, that energy is fed into the DNA. So that means that the story has to be brought to the surface, because I guarantee you there's some tad bits of mucky muck that's there. And if, like you said, if we're throwing all the affirmations on top of it, it's not, the affirmations aren't healing anything. It's not sinking into the mire of it. because you're not bringing that story up and saying, and especially telling our young children, and it was also with my son and my younger son, that story is there. They got to be adults before I realized that, ooh, that story's in their DNA, right? And then the confirmation of that story is them having a dad that wasn't, I mean, their father started being in the picture when they got young adults, right? But he wasn't really there while they were small, growing into adults. So that was just the story that kind of like confirmed it for them in the DNA. It was never anything that said, "Oh, Mom, I feel this way or I feel that way." I thought I was doing the male-female thing, being mommy and daddy, and I thought I had it going on as a single mom, right? But this story is so embedded. This story has been around for centuries of men telling the story over again. It didn't just happen in the 60s. It didn't just happen 40s and 30s. This is centuries old, this story. So old that it became part of mankind's DNA. And then it trickled down as a confirmation to women that the women who are in this story. I'm going to tell you the story with me. The first time I ever heard my uncle tell my baby brother that little boys don't hit little girls. Holy shit. The idea that came into my head, the light bulb, man, it's go, really? Ooh, the things that, oh, my brother, but see, my mom caught it. She caught it. The reason why it didn't set with me is because she caught it. She says, just because little boys just because society says little boys shouldn't hit little girls, doesn't mean little you can take advantage of your brother. She nipped it in the bud, right? So that story didn't get to grow with me. But there are a lot of women that story grew, and when they got into womanhood, now they're dealing with men. They're not dealing with little boys anymore. They're dealing with men who will try to hold on to the grip of not fighting back, because they were told little boys don't hit little girls, so men don't hit women. But if a woman backs them into a corner, what's going to happen? Right?
On so many levels, not just like backing, but like mentally, emotionally. Like, even I can say that I've learned so much in my relationship. Oh, I played a part. I definitely, right? I had an expectation. I didn't have what I wanted in a dad. So then I didn't realize that I was placing heavy pressure and expectation on my partner, who was like, I don't know if I can really take that on. I didn't notice I was doing that for him. And then at the same time, he didn't grow up with his father. So then he was just, whatever he was given is what he thought he was supposed to be. And then resistance happened. I don't want to be like my dad. And yet every time you say, I don't want, you're resisting. And then all of a sudden, boom, you start to do things that was very much like your dad. And you're like, you're trying to grapple with like, who am I? And as women, we get opportunities like this to have these type of discussions. But I really always believe that men deserve to have these type of discussions too, and to have moments to share and be vulnerable with themselves and with other men. I'm also big on like, no, let's everybody get into a circle and have conversation, because you can't learn and grow if not everybody's there. So to have women and men to be able to converse as well together, to say like, well, I feel like this because I experienced these things.
Right. And I keep telling the divine, why do you keep bringing this to me? How do I do this?
So important. This thing is so important to have women and men to get together to have these conversations, because so many times in the work that I do and the clients that I deal with, I have with so many women, and I was guilty of doing it too, is that like, it's him. It's a him thing. He's doing it to me. I'm in that victim mode. And every single time they'd be like, it ain't him. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not him. it's supposed to be him, and he's supposed to fix himself, and then I'll be better. And it
I'll be
was
better.
right,
Right.
and that's just not how it works. There's things
Yeah.
within ourselves as women that we need to fix within ourselves before we can start to point the finger out. And I
Right.
know that sometimes might be hard for people to even swallow. At times it's hard for me to swallow. Like, I can't I can't say, and I'll never forget somebody saying to me, like, it wasn't it wasn't your fault, Rashida, that your parents got together and that is the relationship they had.
Right.
It takes two, and whatever that is for them, it's for them to figure out if they get the opportunity to do so.
Okay.
I had to then sit back with that and say, like, okay, like, me and my partner had a moment where it's like, and he said this to me, he was just like, why are we trying to create a life based off of what was taught to us? Why can't we just create something that works for us, Rashida? And I was like, I never thought, because I put so much pressure on myself, and then I place it on him because I'm putting so much pressure on me. And he's like, well, why can't we just create something that's just me and you? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that feels like way less stress off the shoulders. Well, what is that going to look like? And through that, we've been able to have
That
moments of like,
sounds like a whole workshop that you guys can teach people from, instead of, Rashida, wait till you get to the part where the divine explains how your higher beings have come in to give you whatever the moment is that your higher being wanted to express as. That's why your mom and dad got together. That's why their mother and father got together, and their mother and father got together to get to a point of what your higher being wanted to learn or feel. And then when you sit down with your higher being and say, well, what did you want to feel in that moment? Why was I in that moment of all that, what I felt so oppressed and so abused? What did you want to feel? And then I'm going to tell you, your ego, your higher being says, well, I only wanted to feel what loss felt like. And then I go, right? And my higher being says, I didn't put a time limit on it. I didn't say you had to be in it all that time, right? And hands, what? Do you know what? That kind of thing. And my higher being going, are you ready to release it? Because you can. And then go, what? It's kind of just going, really? And try to teach that to people, that our souls had plans and purposes and free will and everything, and that's why we were given free will. Like your partner says, why can't we just choose to do things differently? Why do we have to do it the same way? And that's where the soul says, he's got it. And I'm just going, yes. And I'm
yeah,
going, but when people start, that light bulb goes on, and then you go, what? I love watching people go, oh, I got it. That's what they mean by generational, how your generation comes forward, and the information, the information is dropped into your DNA. It's like, oh, so my mother did this. My mother and father experienced this to give me a story that my higher being, or my soul, whatever you want to call it, wants to feel. It wants to feel something. Then it gets to feel it, and then it's waiting for you to close the story, but we don't know to close it because we're only the form. We haven't learned that, oh, okay, this is only a story. This is only energy turned into an object. Now the object it's not feeling like it's for my highest and greatest good anymore. Now I get to take the energy and I get to transform, or the form, the object, and I get to transform it back to energy and then surrender it. Nobody told us that process.
mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody told me that process?
Nobody told. You had to learn that over time. But I'm glad that we get opportunities like this to have conversations like this, because it helps.
It definitely
it helps
helps
on so many levels.
on so many levels. And like we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes, girl. So I'm going to have to release the conversation and ask if you will come back.
Of course.
And be a return gift.
Of course.
Gift. Yes, a return gift. Not a return guest, a return gift.
I love
right?
It.
All right. So and I'll get back with you when we're going to do that, maybe sometime in at the end of June, or maybe the first or second week in July, maybe. You can let me know when you're available.
Yes.
Yes.
I love this. Yes. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Okay. Please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can look you up. Tell them about your podcast and just everything.
So you can, I'm always on Instagram. Honestly, I'm learning to just take breaks here and there and just be in the present moment. So am I always posting on social media like I used to? Not as much, but I think it's because I'm trying to just harness in more on the quality of work that I want to give out. That's just for me personally. But you can find me, Righteous Sun 00, and then in the bio, you'll see my link tree, and through the link tree, you'll get access to everything that I do, whether that's bookings for Reiki, bookings for psychic sessions. You can book there. And then you can also take a look at the podcast too, which is continuing to grow and shift. I love how the conversations are going with the themes and the topics that I'm talking about. A new episode dropped today, actually, talking all about the emerging into transformation and spiritual awakening. So yeah, you can listen to that on Spotify and Apple. And yeah, that's it. That's how you can connect with me.
All right. So everyone that has stopped by for this conversation, thank you so much for being part of this vibrational conversation. Thank you so much, Rashida. And I'm just going to close this energy circle with 10845. I am going to say, everyone have a beautiful weekend, and be the creators you were meant to be. You were born with all your gifts, all your talents, all your skills. Oh, if they're opening up to you, step down from fear into just being slightly a little bit scared, and then step down from that, or step up from that. Actually, I'm telling you to step down, step up from that, step up from fear to being a little bit frightened, step up from being frightened to being a little bit excited, and then step into your gift and just go hog wild and be the creator that you were meant to be. All right.
Thank you.
Anyone who is coming in late, you know me, I will save it. It will be in replay. And we had a lot of information. So this is 2.5 hours. You can chop it up. You can listen to it while you're cooking or while you're driving home from work. But I guarantee, yum.
It was a good one. It was a good one. Add me on collaboration. I'd like to have it on my thing so people can have a chance to just check it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was gonna add you as a collaborator anyway. So
all right, yeah.
That's my confirmation. All righty. So everyone, be blessed today.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you so much, Rashida. Love you. Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.